Good morning, everybody, and happy World Bee Day. Welcome to our audiences, and very glad you are ready to spend the next 1 hour and 15 minutes with us to not only listen to the bees, as we called our webinar today, but also listen and engage yourself, listen to our panelists, listen to our audience, listen to our colleagues from Europe, from Denmark, and also engage yourself. So very glad to have you here as our audiences, colleagues from the embassies located in Denmark, colleagues from environment protection agencies and ministries across Europe, and also colleagues who are caring and working directly with bees here in Denmark. This webinar is organized by the Embassy of Slovenia, the Slovenian Embassy to Denmark, and the European Environment Agency. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to some welcome words to the Ambassador of Slovenia, Her Excellency Mr. Edvin Skrt. And after that, you will also have some welcoming word from Mr. MacSharry, who is leading the Biodiversity Group at the European Environment Agency. Mr. Ambassador, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Katja. Good morning to everyone. It is a great pleasure to be with you on World Bee Day. This year in this virtual forum, but we will come back in person. The reason that we are meeting today is that just 4 years ago, in 2017, the UN proclaimed this date, 20 May, as World Bee Day. The initiative was taken by Slovenia, but all UN member states anonymously supported the initiative and then joined the efforts of raising the awareness about the importance of pollinators. By declaring a special day to celebrate bees and wild pollinators, Slovenia greatly contributes to raising the awareness of pollinators and at the global level. And as the initiator, we feel that this is our responsibility. The events in the recent years have reminded us that sustainable food security should not be taken for granted. Pollinators will play an important role also in the context of post-COVID recovery and the transition to sustainable agricultural production of food systems that would be more resilient to crisis and other challenges. Our embassy too pays a lot of attention to awareness-raising efforts, and we are very pleased and grateful that already 2 years ago, when we organized our first seminar on the importance of bees, we got such outstanding supporters as the European Environment Agency and DG Environment of the European Commission are. We together took on the difficult task to explain to the public why pollination service matters and what are the challenges of extensive agriculture and food production, how to keep the balance between food security, food safety, and the well-being of all living beings while preserving biodiversity. We are still searching for ways how to prevent a further decline of pollinators, reverse the trend, and try to restore pollinators' numbers. Among the drivers of change for the better could be a shift to a more sustainable beekeeping, from which in the end everyone would benefit, including the nature and pollinators. I believe we'll talk about this today too. But let me just briefly mention our recent awareness-raising activities. Last November, the embassy launched a special partnership with Copenhagen's local organization Bybi, which promotes a sustainable city beekeeping in a socially responsible manner. Bybi and we have invited all our partners to start listening to the bees, to start watching them, noticing them, and giving them something back. We propose, therefore, to plant more flowers and honey plants in our gardens and on our balconies, to pay attention to our immediate environment, which would be a friendly space to every one of us, including pollinators. And I'm very pleased that so many have replied positively and in a very concrete manner to our campaign, Listen to the Bees. My colleagues, ambassadors, Danish ministers, members of Folketing, if I only mention a few. And I would like to thank each and everyone who is participating in today's event. I'm very pleased that we can collaborate closely again with European Environment Agency and DG Environment, and also with Association Wild Bees in Denmark and the Danish Beekeepers Association. And I'm also pleased that the Slovenian Beekeeping Academy, the heart and engine behind World Bee Day, will also participate at today's virtual panel. Before I pass the floor, let me just announce that together with Bybi, we will launch an audio app called Soundwalk with the bees later today in Ama in Copenhagen. And I'm sure Oliver will talk about this later on. And one more thing, that later this year, on Friday, 19 November, we will be organizing a honey breakfast to remind you again of the role of pollinators and also about the sustainable and locally produced food. You will be warmly welcomed, then hopefully not just virtually. I would like to thank you for your attention and now kindly invite our co-host, representative of the European Environment Agency, to welcome you before we turn to the panel with our 6 distinguished experts. Brian MacSharry is head of the Biodiversity Group at the European Environment Agency. And Brian, please take over. You have the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dobrjuto, Hvala, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you so much for your introduction. I would like to say on behalf of the European Environment Agency, we are honoured to be working with our friends and colleagues in the Embassy of Slovenia in Copenhagen again for this World Bee Day. We had an event physically in 2019 in our headquarters in Copenhagen. Unfortunately, last year's event was postponed. This year we're online, and hopefully next year we'll be face-to-face again. I think it's important to recognise the effort that has been done to promote World Bee Day as a pollinator day by the government of Slovenia, and I think I warmly recognise and welcome that. We are part of a global day. This is our Copenhagen, or European version of what we're doing for this day. We got some really good speakers for the day, crossing a variety of different areas from the European to local level. I would also like to say, I think today is also an important day because it's the first birthday of the EU's Biodiversity Strategy. 20th of May last year was when it launched as part of the ambitious Green Deal. I would like to think that the date was chosen because it was so linked to pollinators and bees as a whole. I would just like to say thank you very much again, Mr. Ambassador, for your introduction. On behalf of our Director, Hans Brunings, I would like to say welcome to everyone. It's our honour to work with you all on this day. So I'll hand back to Katja to launch the rest of the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And now I think it's time to invite our distinguished panelists to the screen. Welcome to you all, and I have the pleasure to introduce you very briefly. And as already was said by the Ambassador and Brian, we have actually the pleasure to have what I would call a 360-degree view on the issue. So we would hear from you, why is it actually important? What is the state today of the situation with the pollinators and bees, and what we can do as society? And here society, I mean 360 degree. We have the EU perspective, We have the national perspective from different countries, and we have real people who keep working with bees on the ground, and also aspects of social cohesion in there. So I think I would like to introduce you now, and then for you, our audience, we have the opportunity to also ask questions after that. We will have very short interventions by the panelists, and you can already think about your questions, and we have the opportunity then to discuss a little bit later on. So the first who would be giving an introduction here is Mr. Brian MacSharry. We heard him already welcoming you, Head of Biodiversity Group at the EEA, and he will talk about the Biodiversity Strategy. Then we have Mrs. Ariana Ferfila. Hello, Ariana. She's the Head of Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia, and she's presenting to us the Academy and what Slovenia is actually doing under the World Bee Agenda. As you heard, Slovenia has introduced or has suggested this day to be mentioned to the United Nations, and it's actually also carrying the responsibility, as we can see today. Then Mr. Oliver Maxwell is talking to us, to you. Hello, Oliver. He's the founder and director of Bybi and presenting the sustainable and responsible urban beekeeping that he's doing and he's leading in Copenhagen. The next would be Dr. Lise Hanstedt. Hello, Lise. She is a project advisor at the Danish Beekeepers Association, and she will talk to us and explain the significance and the relations between pollinators and the environment. And Mr. Jørgen Petersen will be talking also to us, and he is the head of the Association of Wild Bees in Denmark. And he will talk about what we can give back to the bees and other pollinators. As also the, if I can say, the motto of this year's International Day from the UN is actually be engaged and build back better for bees. So I think you will be talking about that a little bit. And last but not least, we have Tanja Franotovic. Hello, Tanja. She's Senior Communications Officer at DG Environment, European Commission, and she's presenting to us the initiative on the Pollinator Park project. A warm welcome to all of you. And I think we're going to start now by giving you the floor for very short 5 to 7 minutes introductions, and after that we will listen to the questions from the audience. Should we start with Brian then, please?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see the presentation. I'm going to give a very quick overview on pollinators and the EU Biodiversity Strategy, focusing a little bit on that big picture perspective that Katja had mentioned. Maybe to start off with, why are pollinators important? I think simply put, it's down to food, nature, our health, and our planet. If you care about any one of those words in there, you care about pollinators. For example, in the European Union, 84% of crop species and 78% of wildflower species depend on animal pollination. If you want to equate that into a number, that's 15 billion euros annually of EU's agricultural output are directly attributed to insect pollinators. And as we're focusing on bees, there's over 2,000 wild bee species in Europe, and there's a host of other different types of pollinators as well that are involved in that. Again, why are they important? Simply because the trend in population of pollinators is an excellent barometer on the health of the environment. It's like when you take your temperature and you know, are you sick, are you healthy? Pollinators are that thermometer for our society. We know that unfortunately the habitats where the pollinators, they feed, they live, their status, the conservation status, the state of them is actually worse than for a number of other habitats. We also know that over 30 years of observations of grassland butterflies show that we are actually declining and we're losing about 1/3 of their population. The main drivers for this loss, as Mr. Ambassador did flag a little bit, were the intensification of agriculture, especially how we use some pesticides, how we fragment or break up the landscapes, and therefore the resulting loss and degradation of the habitat habitats that are suitable for pollinators. We have what we call invasive alien species. There's species that come in and from outside, they outcompete existing native species. And then, of course, we've got climate change, extreme weather events, increasing temperatures. All of this affects how the pollinators can live. Not only do they cause loss of pollination, but they cause loss of biodiversity as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier on, 1 year ago today, the EU launched its very ambitious EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030. This is part of our European Green Deal, and it really offers a new context for biodiversity. It's closely linked to ongoing discussions at a global level for a global biodiversity strategy. And for me, one of the key commitments of this strategy is that they want to reverse and halt the decline of pollinators. That's a very ambitious statement that's put up very clearly in the strategy. How are we going to do this? It's going to do it by maybe two general actions. We're going to call them protection and restoration. For example, with the protection, we're talking about creating protected areas. You can see on the screen here an extract from the strategy itself, which talks about protecting at least 30% of the European Union's land area and sea area. Also, as part of a connected network of sites. Part of it has to be strictly protected, which means there's going to be a lot of regulation on what you can and cannot do in that. But also it's flagging that these areas, these pieces of geography in the landscape, they need to be effective. They need to be achieving their objectives. So today we're at 26% of the land area of the EU is covered by protected areas, 11% of the sea. Though we need to do an awful lot more to make sure that they're effective and also that they're connected in what we're doing. The restoration aspect is, again, it's not only a case of protecting what we have, this 30% plus, and that varies in different countries. We also need to make sure that we're restoring nature as a whole. The strategy has 14 key commitments on restoration. And as I said, reversing the decline of pollinators is one of them. You can see here a screen grab as well from it. We want to increase organic farming, we want to restore rivers, we want to reduce the risk of pesticides. But again, halting biodiversity is one of the key things. So the EU Biodiversity Strategy is all about protecting and restoring our biodiversity. Pollinators are a key indicator for the health of our biodiversity and vital to our well-being. In conjunction with the EU Pollinator Initiative, it's about providing pollinators with space that is protected, that is connected, and where the threats to pollinators are reduced or eliminated. Again, simply put, it's healthy pollinators, healthy biodiversity, healthy society. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to have a series of very excellent speakers over the next few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for introducing to us the Biodiversity Strategy and its 1 year anniversary and these very ambitious targets that actually give us a quite strong agenda to work on at the European level. And as you have seen, there's not an easy target. These are not easy targets to achieve, but they have to be achieved. And without further ado, I would like to invite now Ariana Ferfila, Mrs. Ariana Ferfila, who is heading the Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia. And I very much look forward to hearing from you what is actually a Beekeeping Academy and what are you doing under the World Bee Day agenda in Slovenia. The floor is yours, Ariana.
Thank you very much. Let me say that I'm honestly delighted to be able to join you today. First, let me say a few words about World Bee Day. The date of May 20th is related to the birthday of the first teacher of modern beekeeping and Slovenian beekeeper Anton Janša. Already in 1770, Habsburg Empress Maria Theresa appointed Anton Janša as the first beekeeping teacher in the Habsburg Empire. Recognizing Janša's innate talent with the science and practice of keeping bees, she named Janša as the first instructor of the Imperial Beekeeping School in Vienna. And Janša's influence in Slovenian beekeeping is remembered today. World Bee Day aims to, of course, raise awareness among the world public about the importance of conserving bees and other pollinators, which are increasingly endangered now more than ever and in need of conditions that will enable them to survive. So every year on World Bee Day, numerous celebrations, conferences, and other events take place in Slovenia and around the world, raising public awareness of the importance of preserving bees pollinators, and biodiversity. The first international celebration of World Bee Day took place on 20th of May 2018 in Slovenia, more precisely in Žirovnica, the birthplace of Anton Janša. But in 2018, also another important step was made regarding the support of international beekeeping knowledge transfer. Pursuant to the Agriculture Act, the Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia was established as an organizational unit of the Agricultural Institute of Slovenia, which is the leading research institute in the field of agriculture in Slovenia. The Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia was established as a response to a growing demand for rich Slovenian apicultural knowledge and expertise from abroad. As Slovenians are a beekeeping nation, there exists great awareness about the importance of bees and shared desire to maintain the highest standards of knowledge related to apiculture. Slovenian apiculture has been widely appreciated abroad thanks to its traditions and special characteristics. Slovenian beekeepers are today recognized around the world as world-class experts in their field who are well-organized and practice beekeeping in a sustainable and bee-friendly manner. Their expertise and knowledge are highly regarded and they serve as role models for beekeepers in other countries. So Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia strives to share knowledge about beekeeping in the form of non-formal educational courses to promote Slovenian educational institutions in the field of beekeeping and to spread new knowledge in the national and international context. The Academy organizes and implements informal trainings. In the field of apiculture, it cooperates with educational and training institutions and legal entities in the field of apiculture in the Republic of Slovenia and abroad. The Academy is intended mainly for training foreign nationals, beekeeping instructors, and other interested stakeholders. So Beekeeping Academy carries out its mission to share its extensive knowledge about beekeeping in Slovenia as an organizer and provider of various types of educational courses, such as queen breeding and selection, apitourism, beekeeping with Aji hive, and guidelines for good hygiene habits in beekeeping. So furthermore, we are also developing specific educational programs according to the local needs and requests. We are, for example, cooperating with non-profit organization IPF in developing a project in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are also now in the midst of discussion about the potential of developing projects in countries of Latin America as part of Team Europe initiative. And on the other hand, quite successful pilot project in Bangladesh with BRAC was just finished. So if you would like to learn more about Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia, I invite you to turn your attention to our short video that was distributed and created to present our beekeeping heritage and Beekeeping Academy of Slovenia, or visit our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ariana. And that is actually kind of an inspiration for people who really want to go deeper here. Actually, you can come and get the training course in your academy. Is that correct? You do it also for foreigners. Thank you very much. That is some inspiration for myself and probably some of our audiences. Great. So let's move to our next panelist, which is Oliver Maxwell. Bybi has already been introduced today, Oliver, and maybe it's for you to tell us also how one can combine sustainability and then social aspects of beekeeping. What are they and how can these two things be working together? Oliver, floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to start at a different point, actually. One of the things that has been really inspiring for us and for me in this project over the last 10 years has been the discovery of something called regenerative agriculture. I think it's not really a surprise anymore to any of us that modern agricultural systems have been very destructive for the health of the planet. That we've had soil erosion, we've had loss of habitat, we've had loss of biodiversity, we've had billions of tons of CO2 produced from industrial agriculture, and the poisoning of our water and air through the use of pesticides and chemicals. And what we learned from regenerative agriculture is that it's actually possible to reverse this process. That if we treat the land in the right way, that you can actually restore the health of the soil, and you can have increasing biodiversity, you can have cleaner water, and all the things that are essential to confront the crisis that we're confronting in the world today. And when I heard about this, it occurred to me that it's absolutely absurd that we're not all doing this all the time. It seems so important that we could actually use this concept in everything we do, in the way we produce, in the way we consume, in the way we work together. And the question I asked myself was, how could we do this in relation to bees in the city? So the most important concept in regenerative agriculture is how we restore the health of the soil community. You talk about the soil community, which is the bacteria and the fungus and the worms and everything else that's living together in the soil. When I look out of the window here in Copenhagen, I can also see a community, but rather than just bacteria and worms, it consists of people, doctors and teachers and families. It consists of plants that we plant, and it consists of animals as well, bees, wild beetles, butterflies, birds, all of us living together in a kind of multi-species community. And the question is, how do we work with that? If we can take this idea of working with a community and convert it to something out here, what could it give us? Especially this community of bees and flowers and people that are so important for one another to thrive. And when we did this, we noticed an enormous sort of change in the way in which we perceived each other and the way in which we perceived the city here in Copenhagen. Changed, for example, our vocabulary about how we talked. So instead of talking about consumers of honey, we started to realize that the people who were eating our honey are co-producers of it. I'll give you an example of what that meant. We worked with one business where they had a big sort of green patch of grass outside their business, and we put some beehives on it. The employees of the business became fascinated by the bees, and some of them began to come down and learn about them together with our beekeeper, who's from Syria, a refugee from Syria. After a few weeks, they called and they said, "What else can we do?" And they decided that they would have a day where all of the employees got together to convert this 5,000 meter piece of grass into a pollinator garden. They planted fruit trees and berry bushes. They let the grass grow wild. They cut holes in the fence around the business so that rabbits and hares can run backwards and forwards. It was a very dry summer, so that year they all volunteered to kind of keep the trees planted and watered and healthy. And what we saw was that in the case of a couple of years, what was a completely overlooked piece of grass transformed into a beautiful garden, which attracted all sorts of insects, plants, birds, and produced an absolutely incredible honey, which we then sold back to the employees, who then used it again to kind of as a thanks for creating this environment. We started to do that in projects right across the city with 20 or 30 businesses, with social organizations, starting to find out how that we could work with honeybees instead of bees on their own, but to see them as part of a community, as the center of something that could invite people to understand their environment in a richer and healthier way. After a while, we realized that our vocabulary changed about other things as well. It changed our perception of the city we live in and the animals and plants that we share it with. It wasn't just about consumers becoming co-producers, but also about producers, about workers becoming on the same level as the people who are consuming it. We stopped talking about saving the bees and started realizing that the bees and the flowers and the people were part of the same community and needed to be looked at as a kind of collective whole. We stopped talking about honey as a product and realized that honey was an invitation, that the journey of the bees doesn't stop with the honey, but it starts there, that for every spoonful of honey, we need to think about how we can plant more flowers for more pollinators and create a richer environment for all of us together. It also changed the way in which we worked with other organizations in the city. We started working with artists and designers and chefs. We started realizing that the most important way for our multi-species community to thrive was for us to understand each other better. And one of the best ways to do that is through art. We had performances with dancers. We are doing this project this afternoon on listening to the bees, on how you can actually try and understand what it's like to be a bee. Basically, we discovered that there was a whole new way of understanding that was beginning to emerge through the bees and through the relationships that the bees showed us. So to conclude, I think there's two things. One is that if we step back a moment and look at our relationship to bees over the last 200 years, you can see that we've become industrialized alongside the bees, that we've focused too much on being producers of honey, whereas instead we need to look at ourselves as part of a community and change the way we talk about it. Maybe be a bit critical about talking as bees as queens and workers, and see them instead as part of something that can contribute positively to our local environment if we're a part of that at the same time. So I'd like to kind of, in connection with World Bee Day, in connection with the work we're doing here in Copenhagen, invite everyone to work with the bees to restore a healthier relationship with the environment, to explore the curiosity and the pleasure and the care that the bees can give us, and to see how together we can create a community in our urban areas and also in the countryside where bees, flowers, and people can thrive.
Thank you very much, Olivier, for offering that very different but innovative, I would say, lens and perspective of us being part of a community with bees and flowers. That is really inspiring. Thanks. A lot of food for thought here. I would like to maybe just pause and give, just relate back to Ariana's presentation, and that gives me the opportunity to alert you also to the information section that is on the website where you are just now listening there, because the video that Ariana mentioned and some other material is there in an information section. So if you have the time afterwards, you can have a look there. And now I would like to introduce and give the floor to Dr. Lise Hanstedt from the Danish Beekeeping Association in Denmark. And I think you will also refer back to what we heard earlier about the not so very positive situation that we are having today, and basically what we can then do to improve the relationship with the pollinators and the environment and the people, as Oliver just said. Please, Lisa.
Thank you, Paolo. Yeah, it seems quite simple. Without pollinators, our environment and food production would degrade significantly. And without an environment that provides food and shelter for the pollinators, we would lose the pollinators. 87% of the world's flowering plants, or wild plants, are pollinated by insects and other animals. And 75% of our global crops are more or less pollinator dependent. At least 785 bee species are visiting flowers of crop plants. And if we have different bees working differently in crops, or in crop flowers, we can harvest a higher yield of higher quality of many crops. So all this knowledge, that should be enough to safeguard the pollinators. Unfortunately, alarming results here shown from Germany has shown that the insect biomass in German nature areas has been declining by 75% during 27 years. And insect abundance have been declining by 78% during only 10 years. And although we are lacking data on the well-being of bees for many places, there's a strong evidence that wild bees are declining and that honeybees are also declining in certain areas. So why are the pollinators declining? Why are we letting it happen when we know how important they are and when we know what to do? And we have even known for quite some time. Yeah, the very most important reason for the decline, that is change in habitat management, leading to decline of food resources and shelter possibilities, and as importantly, also leading to fragmentation of habitats. Fields are still today getting larger and larger, on the expense of field rows and hedgerows. And whenever a field row is ploughed to give access to large machinery, a small piece of nature where the pollinators could live is disappearing. And often we will see that pollinators may be left on islands with food and shelter, but with no access to the mainland. Yeah, this is a figure from a project at the University of Copenhagen called Bee Farm, and I think it illustrates it very well. To the right, you can see two small patches in the middle of the field, which are green. In the center, you have a circle. Sorry, I started again. The yellow star is the center of a circle, 500 meters in radius. All the green patches are areas with plenty of food for the bees, and the red ones are patches without food. To the right, you can see two small patches in the middle of the field, which here in the spring have plenty of food for the bees. But in summer, you can see it has all changed. They're getting red, there's no food. And if there are any wild bees or solitary bees left here at this time, they're only flying like maybe 100 meters or less from the nesting place. So they would simply sit here and die because they would not be able to move to better areas. Yeah. In Denmark, 75% of the land is covered by agriculture and commercial forest. 12% cities and roads, and 13% is some kind of nature. And at the moment, a number of nature parks are being created in nature areas, meaning in those 13% which are already nature. And they're lying scattered around in Denmark. They will sustain the bees which are already being sustained there, but they will not solve the real issues, that the bees are lacking space, quality of space, and connections between space. For that, we have to look into the 61% of Denmark, which is today mostly intensive agriculture, and to the 14%, which is commercial forest. Nature is not restricted to nature areas. If we start to look for and create smaller and bigger natural areas, cultivate bee flowers, and secure nesting possibilities in between agriculture and forest, we could expand the living areas for the pollinators and strengthen the connections between the pollinator-friendly areas tremendously. That would also help the pollinators facing the effects of climate change. If the conditions for the pollinators are changing, for example, because an area is getting warmer, the pollinators have two possibilities. Either they can adapt to the new conditions, or they can move to better suited areas. And they can only move if the present living area is connected to other areas to which they can move to. And in some conservation strategies, it is being considered to future-proof landscapes and other. In some conservation strategies, it has been considered to future-proof landscapes to make it possible for pollinators to move. But however, at present, it is not possible in Denmark. Sorry, I think I'm confusing things.
Okay.
However, at present, it is not possible in countries like Denmark and other highly developed countries. We have too few natural habitats, whether nature parks or not, and they need to be connected. And that can only be done through the agricultural and forested areas. So now, therefore, we need to prioritize pollinator-friendly habitats, including nature, sown or planted pollinator-friendly plants, and facilitation of nesting areas and cultivated land, so we get a network of areas suitable for pollinators. That's the only way we can secure more space, better quality of space, and the possibility for the pollinators to move from one area to another if needed. It can help the pollinators to survive local degradation and to combat climate change. It's the best way we can secure a diversity and an abundance of pollinators, our crops and wild plants in the future in countries like Denmark. Jan Petersen will tell more about what can be done. And you can also read more in the Danish Beekeepers Association brand new publication, Bivenlig Inspiration and Viden, and in English, Bee-Friendly Inspiration and Knowledge, which I'm proud to announce is being released today, and which you can download from our webpage, Bivenlig.dk. I would like to thank the Slovenian Embassy for making this valuable webinar possible, and also the European Environment Agency. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to you then, Lisa, and also for alerting us to some of the real challenges of implementing our policy ambitions on the ground, and what the tricky issues then are for the pollinators. And this illustration you gave about Denmark is quite striking, because it's actually not so trivial to create these connecting areas and the connection between species that would then help the species and the pollinators to strive. So thank you very much for that. And as you announced already, I'd like to give now the floor to Jørgen Pedersen, who leads the Wild Bees Association in Denmark. And I hope, Jørgen, you will also give us some insight of what each of us can actually do to, as you call it, give back to the bees and other pollinators. Floor is yours, Jørgen. Are you there?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute my microphone. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Yes, what can we give back to bees and other pollinators? I have to change here. Well, bees are crucial to food production and to nature. Without bees, we had to do without a number of our most favorite and healthy eats, such as berries and fruits and vegetables. Bees and other pollinators are vital to the functioning of ecosystems in nature. And besides that, bees make up a large part of nature's biodiversity. In Denmark, 292 species of bees have been registered over the years. It includes 29 species of bumblebees, 262 species of solitary bees, and the honeybee. The Danish Red List estimates that about a quarter of all species in Denmark are threatened with extinction, while a third quarter are vulnerable. The lack of varied supply of flowers and the lack of flowers during certain, often prolonged periods in the summer seasons is the main reason for bees' misfortunes. In addition, the bees need breeding grounds and also wintering grounds. It is especially the industrialization after World War II that has led to a great loss of habitats for bees, both in the countryside and also in urban areas. On many places, the conditions for bees are anything but hospitable. The agricultural landscape is described as green deserts, and urban areas are, if not pure concrete deserts, then they also sometimes looks like green deserts. Everything there are lots of areas with short-cut lawns, which are just, green deserts for pollinating insects. On many places, the conditions for bees, as Lisa Henstedt made clear, the bees' chances of survival are impaired if the bees cannot move to new areas. Especially the solitary bees are vulnerable because they cannot fly very far, typically often just a few hundred meters. These bees have a hard time escaping a bad condition, a bad location that is isolated from other nature. It therefore makes sense to ensure that the landscape, whether in the countryside or in the cities, contain a wide-ranging, cohesive network of small and large natural areas. In Denmark, there are more than 70,000 kilometers of roads. Along these roads, there are ditches and narrow stripes of flower beds. These areas are good for bees, but it requires that we protect them and adapt the care so that there are more flowers. The cut biomass should be removed. Public green areas managed by the municipalities are obvious places to provide more space for bees. Some municipalities are working on biodiversity plans to create more wild nature in urban space. This includes more flower meadows in parks, more trees in the streets and that more dead trees are left at the root or on the ground. Flower boxes and flower beds are also ways to provide more space for bees. Public administrations or nature organizations should seek dialogue with business enterprises in order to get them involved in the idea of establishing a close to nature care of the companies outside areas. Companies that know how to brand themselves as nature and bee friendly will be attractive workplaces for the highly educated workforce of the future. In a typical house garden, there are many options for bee-friendly measures. First of all, you can let the grass grow. It is also the easiest. You can sow clover grass in the lawn. Old gardens often contain big biodiversity. Such gardens are characterized by a variety of flower species, sun-warmed hotspots with shelter, and dry areas with more or less bare soil. The bee just love it. Lately, bee hotels have become popular and they can stand everywhere. Cities of the future must solve a number of important tasks. They must meet the citizens' desire for a high degree of social well-being. They must be able to adapt to climate change, and they must contain a comprehensive biodiversity. Big cities are simply becoming important and indispensable habitats for bees. Because we humans are so many, we take up a lot of room. We have taken so much space from nature without giving quite a lot back. The bees give us great wealth in form of delicious food and a rich nature, as well as a lot of other things. It is time that we give something back to the bees. We can easily do that. It just requires that we act in order to benefit the bees. The bees give us a lot of value. Now it is time to give them the food they need and the habitats they deserve, so we can benefit from each other also in the future. Thank you very much for listening.
And thank you very much to you, Jürgen, for giving us very concrete examples of we can do, we individuals, but also communes and institutions that have these opportunities. So thank you very much for that. And before we move to the last but not least panelist for today, I would really encourage you again, the audience, to already think about your questions. We have seen one already in the chat. Thank you for that. And the way how this will work, just in a second, is you will post, the best is you post your questions in the chat, and that will be addressed to us, and then we will take it up here. So, but before we come to this, as I said, last but not least, let's listen to Tanja Franotovic, who's working as a senior communication expert at DG Environment. And Tanja will speak to us about a pollinator momentum and the role of EU policy and communication also. Floor is yours, Tanja.
Thank you, Katja. Thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for having me. So, indeed, I will talk a bit about what we are doing in the EU to build this pollinator momentum, and then look a bit more carefully at our latest project, Pollinator Park. Well, I would start by saying that we definitely, in the last 3 years or so, there has been a pollinator momentum. It started with World Bee Day, not least the efforts of the Slovenian government in 2017, but then also the first ever EU Pollinators Initiative was launched in 2018, where we tried to tackle pollinator decline in a very comprehensive way, looking at drivers of decline, but also increasing knowledge about it, engaging society, raising awareness, and promoting collaboration. There's a wealth of initiatives on the ground. A lot of member states in Europe are fully engaged in pollinator protection. And what we've also noticed is that there has been focus on honeybees and the need to talk more about wild pollinators, from the impact assessments of pesticides, which look at honeybees, to a general misconception in the general public, where we know that only one bee species of 2,000 present in Europe produces honey. So given all this, we decided to make pollinators our main vehicle to talk about biodiversity crisis in general, because it's such an easily communicable topic. It's very tangible. We've heard from all of you today the importance of our food system, the importance of our everyday life, and relatively easy solutions that everybody can do. But this momentum was created by both top-down initiatives and bottom-up, mobilizing grassroots movements. So when it comes to EU policy, as I said, we have launched this initiative, and in the last 3 years, there has been a number of actions were implemented. Just in a few days from now, we will be publishing our first report, looking at where we are. And I will not reveal a lot, but I can say already that we have concluded that it's still a good tool, but there are challenges, not least in addressing the main drivers of pollinator loss, and that is intensive agriculture and the use of pesticides. So there a lot of work remains to be done. In 2021, there will be a series of consultations with the public, with stakeholders, looking at also then how we can strengthen all EU measures for pollinators and revise also this initiative. Brian already mentioned there is the ambitious European Green Deal with even more ambition and targets for pollinators. And there's also global action, because major crisis is a global crisis. And this year, we will have the biggest biodiversity conference in a decade, where we want to ensure an ambitious new global plan for biodiversity, but also for pollinators. So that's when it comes to top-down. When it comes to bottom-up initiatives, as part of EU Pollinators Initiative, we've been very much engaged in communication and engagement. So this is basically about building bridges and connecting the dots between all these things happening on the ground. For this reason, we've set up EU Pollinator Information Hive, which is a one-stop shop for everything you need to know about pollinators, putting all existing initiatives on a map, giving you all the resource to get involved in pollinator protection, and also providing an overview of what there is, what each member state is doing on pollinators, and in different fields, what people are doing. We're also engaging a lot with youth. At the very same event 2 years ago, organized by the EEA and the Slovenian embassy, we got to know our young pollinator ambassadors, and ever since we have been cooperating with them. We are with our partners, European Commission's JRC. We have started distinct projects where youth is doing projects for youth on pollinators, and we're also partnering with a lot of recognized scientific institutions like museums, national parks, zoos, and so on. to empower all these people to do what they're doing well. We have produced a lot of useful tools, materials, from card games for teachers, from guidances for particular sectors, cities, citizens, public authorities, business sectors, how to protect pollinators, to overviews of what each country is doing. However, all this conventional stuff was very useful, but it did not allow us to reach new audiences. And that's why we decided 2 years ago, or rather a year ago, to start to try out something new, to really bring the issue of pollinator decline and nature loss to wide audiences, to make it mainstream. And especially to engage young people in biodiversity protection. We chose virtual reality, immersive technology, for one, because it allows us to be participants in a story, to actually experience what we are seeing, learning, and to be emotionally engaged. So we are really in the story. And another thing is that after in the Corona crisis, everything became digital, and we just decided to meet people where they are, and to use this kind of reset where people were faced with we were faced with our own vulnerability, we're faced with a crisis, and I think people started thinking about the world they want for themselves and children. So we wanted a bit to shake people up by presenting a future world, a dystopian world where pollinators have almost disappeared. So this is the story of Pollinator Park Virtual Reality. We bring you to the year 2050. After a series of ecological crises, there's almost no pollinating insects in the world. But luckily, decades ago, a very foreseeing female scientist, Dr. Beatrice Kukac, decided to build a refuge for the last remaining pollinators. And over the years, it grew into a full park, something like a futuristic farm, which provides a safe haven for pollinators, but also grows food in a world after ecological collapse, and is also an eye-opener for visitors. It may be a bit shocking, but actually this fictional scenario is entirely a plausible scenario if we continue with business as usual. So we welcome you then to this crossover between a zoo, theme park, interactive museum, and real nature. When you enter it, this virtual universe, you can do various things, from exploring pollinators up close and personal, their diversity, where they live. You can actually do hand pollination yourself, to going shopping in a pollinator deprived world. So you see literally which foods, plants, fruits and vegetables are disappearing from your plate as we go along into the future, until there is literally no colorful things on our plates anymore. And we're also talking about solutions and inviting people to become architects of a pollinator friendly environment. So in a very interactive way. Not to stop at just awareness raising and opening people's eyes. We also want, our goal is for Pollinator Park to have some kind of real world impact, so that together, when we are confronted with this disturbing future scenario, we do everything in our power together to stop this from happening. So together to create a better future. And here a call to action is along the lines of everything that we've heard so far today. So from taking action in your community, avoiding chemicals in your garden, rewilding your garden, participating in citizen science, and reducing your impact on the planet. So literally the messages change starts with each one of us. And we are hoping that in this emotionally engaging experience, people would really feel it and be triggered to act. So you're very welcome to try it yourself. There is much more to explore, and Pollinator Park is available both as a VR version for those who have headsets and on the computer. And from today, we also have it in French, Dutch, German, and Spanish. So you're very welcome also to get in touch with me if you have an interest in hosting this kind of experience, because this is ultimately a tool for everybody to use. This was our idea behind it, to give it to people and to help them do what they are doing, but just in a new, fresh, exciting way. So thanks a lot, and happy to discuss further.
Thanks to you a lot, Tanya, and thanks also for especially pointing us to the many sources that under the EU Pollinators Initiative are collected. And this idea of sharing initiatives in Europe, between countries is very important. So thanks for that. And also for inviting us all to explore the Pollinator Park. I will definitely do that. And now I would like to come to a short round of questions. I've seen already 3 in the chat. I would also like to announce that after we have maybe a short round of questions, I would like to ask the audience also some few questions in a little poll exercise. So be ready for that in a second. The questions I'd like to maybe read out for everybody and then address them here to our panelists. So the first one I have seen here is about that restoration places, and whether we also could use like sandy and sparkly, less vegetated places like river lanes and lake islands, if they could also be good for pollinators, not only for rare bird species as we know it today. So I was thinking maybe it's something that you could answer to us, Jürgen. Would you be able to say something about that? But yes. You're muted.
Yes, yes, I think, well, if you had to judge an area, you had to look at it and see if there's any flowers. That's the main demand, the main need they had to fulfill for the bees. Are there food? In Denmark, the last some years, we have asked farmers to make some flower stripes, and that's also a good thing. But every year in the autumn, they just plow the flower stripes down again. So these areas, they are not nesting places or living places for bees, because their nest in the soil is destroyed. So we have to take care that they are both food and shelter, especially when we talk about the wild bees. I know it's some other thing with honeybees, because they have beehives where they can live in.
Yeah.
But the main demand is flowers, and also, from my point of view, some good habitats for nesting.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add from your perspective, Lisa, on that? Or are you happy?
I would say there are many places, as long as you can make sure that there are nesting places and food for the bees. And I think we often underestimate the value of the nesting places, because they are really important, and it's more difficult to provide nesting places for the bees, especially maybe soil nesting bees.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Then maybe let's go to another question from the chat here, which is a bit tricky, I would say, but that's actually a real case. And we are faced with some more, here it's called like anti-beekeepers tendencies, or like radical nature groups, more extreme radical nature groups that actually say we need to completely stop using them. And they use the words like honey mafia, and they are actually trying to say beekeeping and working with bees is completely against nature? So I think that's a tricky question. I don't know if you, Oliver, could reflect a little bit on what are your reflections here.
I think it's
is it too radical or?
Well, I mean, it's the problem is we're all in it. We all wear clothes. We all depend on nature for what we eat, what we wear, what we consume. The problem isn't the bees themselves. It's the system in which we're producing and consuming things. So I think the problem with this debate is that it tends to reproduce this division between people and nature that is actually caused the crisis that we're in the first place. We need to absolutely find a way to deindustrialize our relationship with honeybees. I think that's really, really important. And we need to find a way of doing it where we can enjoy honey, but at the same time contribute more to nature than what we take out. And exactly the same point applies to everything from cotton to oil to other natural resources that we are depending on as human beings.
Yes, so communities is the key word, as you said. Thank you for that. And let's move to another one, which is actually a very concrete one. If you can mention any names, any real flower seeds that we could use ourselves in our gardens and in the city, if people want to really transfer their lawns into bee-friendly habitats. So I was thinking, Ariana, would you be able to recommend some flowers, seeds, or
yes.
is that some? Yeah.
But as I'm not a botanical expert, I would have problems with translating them into English.
Okay, yeah, that can be an issue. Yeah, that's why maybe it's something that we could answer in writing then, unless anybody else feels ready to name some flowers' names in English. Jürgen, go ahead. Yes.
Well, I don't have any specific names, but the best I can recommend is that if you want to have some more native flowers in your garden, and actually that's the best for all kind of bees, then you should go out in the summer and the autumn to collect seeds from all the flowering plants in the surrounding, the natures that you meet along the roads, and collect them and bring them home to your garden and seed them there. That's the best you can do.
That's a very practical, very good suggestion. So let's do that. Thank you very much. Lisa.
I would suggest also that you download the new publication, Biodiversity, which I mentioned in my speech, because there are a lot of suggestions there also.
Great. So revert to the info section on the website again. Thank you for that. And then maybe the last question for today in the chat is actually what we will do after getting a sting by the bees to remove the pain. So that is another good one, but who can answer that? What should be put on your skin if you get a sting? You just live through it. Lisa, can you answer?
Yeah, you can put some honey on, or there are also some small things, small tubes you can put on and suck it out. But I don't know how much. You don't get all of it out. You somehow have to through it.
Very nice. I suggest we take one more question and then move to our poll, because we also want you to answer our final questions here. And people say, we agree that the citizen participation project experience with citizen participation around bees, would that be something, Tanya, that you would find on the website that you presented to us? The question of citizen participation projects that other people do?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, very good. So that's good.
Yeah. So
good.
You find everything there. Yeah.
And the bee hotels, was that the question? Is that just kind of public awareness, or is it a real help for the bees? Jürgen, maybe that's you again.
Well, that's discussed. And people, they don't agree about it, but my point of view is more to attract awareness about what you can do for bees. And actually, I don't think it will help the rare bees.
Great. Okay, so can I then just wrap up by thanking you all for this really nice 360-degree insight into the issues, the challenges that we have had, but also the ways how we can go about it. And just to wrap up, there was mentioning this connectivity was mentioned, the way how we really give space to pollinators more, how we can get ourselves educated and understanding the issues much wider. We have really clear targets in the EU that we set and that are really challenging to achieve also. But I'd like to also remind us what Oliver said about these communities. So we are also part of a community with the bees and the flowers and ourselves. So with this, I would like to just move to a little poll. We have actually prepared 3 little questions for you, for the audience, and would like to answer them. I would like you to answer them. I think the way you do it, there is on your website, on the right side, there are some little buttons. One was where you had the Q&A, but there's also a one for the poll now, if you can move to that. And I would read out the first question and I'd like you to answer it. So the first question would be, do you think of the bees and pollinators when tending your gardens or decorating balconies or windows? Do you think of them? And you can say yes, no, or not yet. Please answer it now. We give you 1 minute. So, as soon as we have a result after 1 minute, I think we will get to see it. So do we get a sign from colleagues when the answers are ready? Here we go. Oh, very good. Many do and others, nobody doesn't. That's really great. And I think we will shift that picture even further after today's webinar, I fully believe. Thank you very much for that. Could we go to the next question then? That is about, would you plant flowers or honey plants in outdoor areas at your office or work? Yes, no, or that's not relevant to you. Again, 1 minute to answer. Thank you. Good. Processing now. Looking forward. If there's many yeses, there are many yeses, that is good. So that is for people who are helping us or who are actually encouraged us today. That must be very good news. So there's a lot of potential to create spaces and also connected spaces, as we learned today. Thank you for that. And maybe the last but not least question we would like to ask you today is about some words that you would say about today. So I think that is the third question. That is actually, the text here should actually say, what was the most useful or interesting fact of today's seminar? So the question, I think, is formulated a little bit, it's the other one. But just to say, think about what is the most or useful or interesting fact or observation for today for you. So we have four options for you. So either it's a general importance of pollinators for our food security and food safety. Is it about the challenging task in preventing the further decline of pollinators? Or is it C, the extent of ongoing efforts by the EU, by national, local, and governments and NGOs that were striking to you? Or is it just that we have the World Bee Day? And it's the 4th edition today. So what was the most striking, interesting learning for you today? Good. So the challenging task in preventing further decline of pollinators is the first, followed by the ongoing efforts of the EU and other players, national and NGOs. Thank you for that. So if I may ask the audience now, we would actually need 10 more minutes in that event today. I hope you have the time for it. We will run over a little bit, but not that long. So 10 minutes more, if that's okay. And then we will be ready with it today, because I would really like to give our panelists also the opportunity to literally say 2 words of what was today their learning and what is their takeaway from today's event before we close it up. Could I just start by, and I start how it looks at my screen, I would like to start by Tanya. What was your main takeaway? Very short, few words.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was very inspired by Oliver's presentation, I have to say, and how bees and pollinators can be our guide in creating a sense of community with between humans, nature, ecosystems, and show us, how to build back better.
Thank you. Brian, would you like to go next?
I would. I think I was inspired by, the solutions that exist. As several speakers said, there's a lot that we can do and that we should be doing. And it's not one of these things where there's no solutions. We don't know what we could do. There's a lot we can do, and some of it's very immediate. So I was very inspired by that.
Thank you. Great. Lisa, what is your takeaway from today?
I think it's something in the same line, but what I was thinking now is that it's really possible to do something for the pollinators. And there are many different ways we can engage in doing something. And depending on our interest, our possibilities, our time, and we don't need to have a piece of land where we can put flowers and nesting areas. We can do without land outside and still do something.
Thank you. Ariana, what is yours?
Well, me, myself, I was very inspired with the idea about regenerative agriculture, and I believe that all our efforts in changing our habits, the way we treat our land and nature is very welcome.
Thank you. Oliver, would you like to go next? Takeaways? Oh, your text you off.
I'm really excited to see how passionate people are about this issue, and how everyone is now talking about this not as just a honeybee issue, but as a general pollinator issue. I think the language has really shifted around that in the last few years, and it's really exciting to have that kind of diversity in the way in which we're approaching the topic.
Thank you. And Jürgen, what's your main takeaway? And after Jürgen, I would like to also ask Ambassador Skrt, if you are still with us, also for your main takeaway. Jürgen, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, for me, it's the biggest deal of today is that we actually have this day, this World Bee Day, where we can celebrate the bees and we can share messages, and that I can see that we are a lot of organizations that want to cooperate to make better living conditions for bees. And I think we should continue that also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Skrt, are you ready to also briefly reflect what is your main takeaway from today?
Yes. When the Slovenian beekeepers for the first time taught about the rising awareness of bees, they might have been thinking about the protection of honeybees and about the Slovenian bee, Carniolian grey bee, which they are so proud of. But already at the beginning of a long process that led to the World Bee Day that was proclaimed in 2017, they realized that they are doing something really important, something big, and that it relates to all pollinators, not only honeybees. And I'm really happy to see this kind of enthusiasm even when we are talking about pollinators today, and we're taking lessons from different perspectives, and we're talking about the crisis of the decline of pollinators, about biodiversity. So I'm really happy and grateful to our panelists today who presented these different important issues that have to be taken into consideration while discussing the importance and the role of pollinators for sustainable food production on one hand, and on biodiversity on the other one. So I would like to thank again all the panelists and the partners and stakeholders who participated at today's event. Thank you.
And thanks a lot to you also for co-hosting it with us today. And by last not least, I would like to remind the panel, the participants that are based here in Copenhagen, that there is actually something to look forward in the afternoon, and there is a link in the info button on the login page of the website that you are watching this event. Namely, there's a walk today, a sound walk in Amma in the afternoon, and maybe I would like to give Oliver maybe the floor to say a very few words about that event, if there are some people who are still considering joining.
Thank you. So one of the things that's really important around cultivating this community of bees and flowers and people is trying to learn to understand each other's perspective. So what is it like to be a bee, and what is it like to be a flower in our urban community here? So we've created a short sound walk, which is about the conversations that happen between bees and flowers and people in an urban park. And this will take place at 4:30 today on the Groning, which is behind DR Buten. And you can come and enjoy a glass of wine from the Slovenian embassy. I think it's going to be both a queen and ambassadors in residence. So you can come and enjoy the walk and taste the honey and visit the bees, and also learn about this dialogue that happens between bees and flowers and people.
That sounds really exciting. Thank you very much. For the ones of our audience who are not in Copenhagen, sorry, you are not able to participate, but still, I would also like to mention to you that there is actually a full week, and the coming days are all about celebrating biodiversity. And I think the Pollinator, the World Bee Day is just a kickoff. We have also the Nature 2000 Day. We have the International Biodiversity Day on the 22nd. We have European Day of Parks. So there's a lot to celebrate in the coming days and weeks. And I think I can mention also, Tanya, that we will also see the EU report on implementing the EU pollinators initiatives in the coming days as well. So thanks for that. And I would leave you all by thanking you all again, the panelists, our technical colleagues that made it possible. Also, not least you in the audience for being with us today, celebrating it. I would like to leave you with a quote by this famous Slovenian, I would call it, he was the initiator of the why Slovenia is so strong in beekeeping, this Mr. Anton Jansa, that beekeeper of the 18th century that I think you mentioned in your intervention, Ariana, about. And he actually said that among all beings, that there are none that are so hardworking and so useful to us as mankind with so little attention needed as bees. So with that, I think I would like to leave you into the afternoon and wish you a very good rest of the day, wherever you are. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.